So today our purpose is to discuss how to write an analytical essay. We'll be using Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window to talk about at a year 10 level how you would construct a response to an essay question. By the end of today, you should be able to unpack the essay topic. You should be able to plan an essay, how to write an introduction, how to improve your body paragraphs by using 2 examples, and write a conclusion. If you do get stuck, just write down the name of the slide and check in with me one-on-one at the end. So the first skill that you'll need to know for the assessment is how to unpack a topic. You will be provided with 2 topics on the day of the assessment. When you get your topic, the first thing I suggest that you do is highlight the keywords in the question. The reason that you're doing that is you're trying to break down what you're being asked, because you can't write just a general response to Rear Window. You have to answer the essay question. So step 1 is use a highlighter to highlight the keywords in the question. Then you should start asking yourself questions about the topic to get you thinking. You'll need to generate those questions yourself. That's how you're going to come up with 3 ideas. For example, if we look at the topic for today, there is a secret world you're looking into out there. What warnings does Hitchcock present in Rear Window? So sometimes I think it's easier to start with the characters and then work backwards to the ideas. So the first thing I'm going, well, who is warned in the text? Jeffries. I remember a strange scene where he's warning Doyle to be careful. Are some of the warnings for the audience themselves? Because I remember in class we were discussing a lot about what Hitchcock intended to do in his text. Now, what were those warnings? Because really that's what's going to form the idea for each of my paragraphs. Well, I remember that Jeffries was warned about the invasion of privacy. So looking into other people's worlds. I'm like, hang on a second, that links to that quote up there about secret world. That would be good. What about the consequences of spying? That also is warned about in the text because Lisa and Jeffries both suffer consequences for watching Thorwald. But it's not just about voyeurism. I could also talk about a warning to the audience in general about judging others. And so that way I'm going to come up with 3 separate ideas for my 3 separate body paragraphs. So make sure that you have written down, unpacking a topic, I highlight the keywords, and then I ask myself questions about the topic, like who was warned and when were they warned? Once I've done that, it allows me to write a plan. Before you start writing your essay, you should jot down what you're going to discuss in each paragraph. Now, you wouldn't do it in this much detail in the assessment because you'll only have 60 minutes writing time. But you should be able to write maybe 1 word and 2 dot point examples for each paragraph. This way you won't go too far off track. For example, in paragraph 1, I want to write that Hitchcock contends that invading another person's privacy is morally wrong. Now, remember back to my unpacking I did before, I said about privacy. My examples that I'm going to use in this paragraph are Jeffries watching Miss Torso as a piece of entertainment, and the way that Stella conveys to Jeffries that she disapproves of his peeping. So I'm going to use 2 examples that work together. Now, my second paragraph needs to be on something different. I'm going to talk about the dangerous consequences for those who interfere with the lives of others. I'm going to talk about the fact that Lisa is assaulted in pursuit of the wedding ring, so trying to get some evidence. But also Jeffrey suffers some consequences as well, as he breaks his other leg trying to save his own life in an attack by Thorwald. Lastly, I'm going to talk about how Hitchcock warns not to judge others by their appearances. So this is more of a warning to the audience as well as to Jeffries. And I'm using the examples Jeffries intends to break up with Lisa because of her superficial tendencies, but also the fact that he realizes later that Lisa is quite impressive after she breaks into Thorwald's and raises the alarm. So he shouldn't have judged a book by its cover. The reason I've done a plan is so that I can map out my examples. None of my 6 examples are the same, because if I've used something in paragraph 1 or 2, I can't use it again in a later paragraph. So by doing a quick plan before you start, this will make sure that you don't get up to paragraph 3 and go, oh, I really wish I had have saved that example for now because another example would have been better in paragraph 1. So this is just one way that you can prepare really well for the assessment. If you've read Mrs. Roncevich's email, it says that we will email you on Friday 4 essay topics, and 2 of those topics will be the ones that we do in class. Now, there's nothing to stop you writing a plan for all 4 essays, and you'll be guaranteed that at least 2 of them will be the ones that you get on the assessment. So by planning and preparing, you will obviously be really in a good spot for the assessment. So now you're ready to write. What do I need to put in my introduction? Just write the dot points on the left down. You'll get a copy of the introduction sample in your rear window revision booklet. But to remind yourself, some of the things that you should include in your introduction are the title, and it's underlined to show that that's the title, the name of the director, and make sure you use capital letters for Alfred and Hitchcock, a 1-sentence summary of the text itself, and this will work for the same whether it's a film or a novel, that you have addressed the essay question in your own words, and that you have signposted a quick little preview of the 3 points that you're going to talk about in your body paragraphs. Now, what you don't want to put in your introduction: examples, quotes, character names. You just want to try to talk about the ideas and not give away any of your great evidence because you're saving that for your body paragraphs. So here we go. The voyeuristic preoccupations of emasculated photographer L.B. Jeffries underpins the major concerns of Alfred Hitchcock in his 1954 film Rear Window. So that covers the summary of the text, the director's name and the title. Now I'm going to make sure that I cover the essay question and ideas. Set against the backdrop of post-World War II Greenwich, Hitchcock warns of the lack of ethics associated with spying and the potential dangers of interfering with neighbours' personal lives. So I've got the word warns in there because that's what the topic was. I've also identified my first point, which will be about the lack of ethics with spying, but also the potential dangers of spying. And then my third point, which was Hitchcock also challenges the static gender roles of the era, considering we should not judge others by their appearance or gendered limits. Now, you might be writing at a more simplistic level than this, with maybe some sentence starters, firstly, secondly, lastly. That's still okay, but we do want to move towards writing some sentences that really encapsulate all your ideas at once, rather than a real stop-start approach, which you may have used in Year 9. If you have a plan, then you can write an introduction effectively because you can outline your ideas. If you haven't got your ideas sorted in a plan, how can you manage to write this? It would be very difficult. Let's move on to how to write your body paragraph. Now, how to write your body paragraph has not changed from year 9. We are still using teal structure, and you can kind of play with this to make it sound more sophisticated. It does not need to be as rigid as this, but you should start with a topic sentence. This is a sentence that outlines what this paragraph will be about. It's about the idea that you're going to express. For example, privacy or judgment or consequences. What we don't want to see in your topic sentences are characters or examples or quotes. It can be quite short if you're worried about adding too much and making it a bit waffly. For example, Alfred Hitchcock warns about the invasion of privacy, full stop. That's better than rabbiting on about LB Jeffries and what he's done. Once you've written a short, sharp topic sentence, you can include your first piece of evidence. Include a key example from the text, something that's relevant to your point, and it should be specific. When LB Jeffries does this, when Lisa Fremont does that. You don't want to talk about the text as a whole. What's one specific thing that happened? And make sure that you have quotes or some film language as part of that. Once you've given your example, you will need to explain it. You need to explain how this evidence is relevant. Why is this example and quote important to the question that you're answering? Come back to that key word, warning, or whatever the key word is in your essay topic. Now, because you're at year 10 level, we would be expecting that you would then include a second example and a second explanation before you move on to your linking sentence. So it's more like topic sentence, evidence explanation, link. Your linking sentence is quite like your topic sentence. You can make a general statement about how this point relates back to the essay question that we asked you. Something like ultimately, or therefore, or thus, just to finish off your paragraph in a nice, neat way. In a moment, I'll show you an example or two, and then I'll let you write your own third body paragraph in a moment. If you have any questions after seeing the example, perhaps jot them down in your workbook, and remember, hold your questions to the end. Let's look at the example 1. Again, you don't need to record the examples because these will be provided to you. Firstly, let's look at the topic sentence. This topic sentence tells me that this paragraph is about privacy and ethics. Hitchcock contends, while exploring rear window ethics, that invading another person's privacy is morally wrong. So it doesn't give me a character, it doesn't give me a quote, and it doesn't give me an example. It just tells me this paragraph is about privacy and ethics. Then I can give my example. Stella conveys her disapproval to Jeffries as he acts as the peeping Tom of the neighbourhood. She insinuates he will see things he shouldn't see and essentially find himself embroiled in trouble, for which the old consequence used to be a red-hot poker to the eye. In that example, I hear specifically what Stella has told Jeffries, and there are actually 4 quotes in there, but they're embedded in a way that makes sense with the way the sentence flows. You can do the same thing. Break up your quotes so they appear to be more and that they make sense. Now, before I move on to another example, I need to explain. I need to explain why what Stella said relates to the essay question. Stella acts as a moral compass for Jeffries, who watches others for his own gratification and entertainment. Through the values of the conservative domestic carer, Hitchcock is able to delineate the McCarthyist views of many in the 1950s, who are concerned about being spied upon by others without their knowledge. So it's kind of explaining that Stella is representative of people who don't want to be spied on. She's pointing out that this is morally wrong, and Hitchcock is warning people of that too. Then I give my second example, and I've used the phrase further to this to lead into the second example, so it kind of flows. Further to this, Jeffries vocalizes misconceptions about his neighbours after breaching their privacy with his binoculars. In particular, Jeffries superficially comments about the sexually liberated life of Miss Torso, the ballerina. He objectifies her with his male gaze as an eat, drink and be merry girl whose apartment is as popular as the equally beautiful Lisa's. So again, this is a specific example. I don't just say, yeah, Jeffries watches his neighbours. Which neighbour? When? And then I have to explain it. This inaccurate condemnation of Miss Torso's lifestyle is portrayed as morally wrong and unjustified when her overweight, bespectacled war hero boyfriend Stanley returns. Thus, Hitchcock highlights that voyeurism is an act which leads to misconceptions and is only superficial in nature. Then I need to say something to end the paragraph. I have to come back to the word in the topic, which was Hitchcock warns. Ultimately, Rear Window warns against the act of spying on others due to the limited nature of the viewer's perspective and the immorality of judging others in their private moments without their knowledge. Now, when I go to my next paragraph, I don't want to repeat any of that. I don't want to talk about privacy again, and I don't want to talk about those examples that you've just seen. Let's have a look at the second body paragraph. Not only does Hitchcock imply it is unethical to watch and interfere with others, he also warns the consequences for the voyeur themselves. So from reading that sentence, I know that this paragraph is about the warning of the consequences. I don't hear any character names, I don't see any quotes yet, and I don't see any examples yet. My first example. After joining in on Jeffrey's spying, Lisa is both assaulted by Mr. Thorwald and arrested by the police. The audience sees the assault in a point of view shot, emphasising that a powerless and emasculated Jeffries cannot help Lisa as she cries for her boyfriend's assistance. Now, this particular scene didn't have any quotes, so I couldn't use anything. So instead, I pointed out that he used a point of view shot to show that Jeffries wasn't able to help. So if you get stuck and there aren't any quotes, you can, of course, use film terminology to assist you in explaining the construction because it's a film. The explanation. Hitchcock constructs the idea that Lisa is likely to face significant consequences and potentially death as the lights are shut out on the scene by the murderer. This illuminates the risk of watching others and then choosing to interfere. Second example. This is comparable to the consequences faced by L.B. Jeffries himself. Alone and defenceless in his apartment, Jeffries is confronted by an angry Thorwald who has seen him watching the arrest. Thorwald threatens Jeff that if the police do get him, Jeff would not be around to laugh. Hitchcock establishes that there are now dire consequences as a result of Jeffrey's voyeurism, and that Stella's previous prediction of trouble has in fact come true. Further to this, Geoffrey suffers a second broken leg in the resolution with Thorwald. He must begin the cycle of being housebound and impotent once again. And then I link, thus Hitchcock presents real consequences for the seemingly harmless act of watching others. Now, in a moment, I will give you the opportunity to try to recreate this using the plan for body paragraph 3. This is the paragraph about judgment, where Hitchcock warns not to judge others by their appearance. And the examples I would like you to use are the fact that Jeffries intends to break up with Lisa, but then he transforms and realizes how impressive she is. Remember, you have to keep coming back to the topic words Hitchcock warns. The last thing that you will need for your assessment is how to write a conclusion. An analytical essay is not complete without a conclusion, but the conclusion should be brief. You don't want to spend a lot of time restating everything that you've just told us in detail. Essentially, you just need to restate what your main contention was, recap your ideas, and use slightly different wording from the introduction. For example, ultimately, it is Alfred Hitchcock's intention to construct Rear Window as a warning to society. Hitchcock considers the ethics and dangers of voyeurism, but also conveys that it is immoral to judge others, in particular using the stereotypical gender roles of the era. And that's it. You want to make sure that your conclusion uses different phrasings, but it shouldn't add any new information than what you have had in your other paragraphs. You're just saying it in summary. So what are my final messages on essay writing? This is really the same as what you did in Year 9, except we're expecting that you use 2 examples to construct each paragraph. You should be trying to add between 6 to 8 embedded quotes in each paragraph, but if you don't, use some film techniques. Always make sure that you come back to the keywords in the question, and that way you will always be on topic. As we prepare for the assessment over the next week and a half, if you get stuck, ask for help, ask for feedback, because we are all learning.